Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get straight to our top story, the Trump administration's battle over national security. During a news conference with Japan's Prime Minister today, President Trump reacted to the Ninth Circuit Court's ruling against his temporary travel ban and its potential impact on America's security. Listen.
We are going to keep our country safe. We'll be doing something very rapidly having to do with additional security for our country. You'll be seeing that sometime next week.
Joining us now with reaction from the White House, Kellyanne Conway, senior advisor to President Trump. So, Kellyanne, what's this all about? I think the president called them new steps, and we'll be seeing them very rapidly.
Well, we have many different options in moving forward. As you know, Eric, yesterday's decision did not affect the merits at all. We're very confident, fully confident that we'll prevail on the merits. There's nothing that the Ninth Circuit did yesterday that calls into question the president's ability under the statute and under his constitutional authority to keep the homeland safe, which is precisely his point. So there are a number of different steps. We can obviously go back to the district court. Some people said it can get all the way to the Supreme Court. He certainly always has the opportunity to put out new executive orders, but the president will make that decision in due course. I just want to make clear that the branches are equal under our Constitution, and in this case, the court seemed to supplant the president's judgment about national security with its own, and that's not an appropriate use of its power.
You know what? One of the other options available to the president is to continue the travel ban. He could literally instruct his TSA, the Border Security, to say, "Hey, we're going to continue the travel ban. Let the Supreme Court tell us not to do that."
Well, and what the president said today in that really remarkable joint press conference with Prime Minister Abe, they had a terrific day together here at the White House, meeting privately first, having lunch thereafter, and then having that joint press conference for all to witness. What he said there is that extreme vetting was his idea, that candidate Trump came up with that idea when he was running based on the information that he had received, based on the exigencies that attend to these matters. And since then, as president and as commander-in-chief, he, of course, receives his daily presidential briefing. He has access to information that you and I don't. And he is that much more convinced that in the interest of keeping this nation safe, that he will take the steps necessary. And we know constitutionally and statutorily he is within his rights to do that.
Does the administration think the courts are playing politics?
Well, more broadly speaking, we believe that judges should not play politics at all, and we respect the fact that the three branches are separate and independent and also equal. One is not supreme over the other. If there are politics in any particular judicial decision, then the president and his spokespeople have a right to call that out. What really concerns us here is that a fair reading of the statute and the Constitution, none of which were affected at all by a very narrowly prescribed TRO ruling. The president is well within his authority, and I would add he has a duty and a responsibility to do this. And also, Eric, it's something that he put front and center in his campaign. Donald Trump beat a former Secretary of State, a former United States Senator who was the United States Senator in New York on 9/11, who, at a former First Lady, he beat that individual based on his much more muscular, much more clear and robust and tough position on these matters.
I don't want to cut you off, but you mentioned 9/11. Is there any initiative? Are we going to look forward to maybe the next couple of days, next couple of weeks on some sort of Gitmo strategy going forward?
Well, the president has said he will address any number of the issues that he talked about during the campaign. But remember, first and foremost, this man that I work with every day, he is focused on the nation's security. And in that regard, he has stated in the past his position on Guantanamo Bay. He has stated his position on terrorism. He's stated his position on ISIS. They're not to be contained or ignored. They are to be eradicated off the face of the earth. And even in his joint press conference and his meetings today with Prime Minister Abe, of course, they're talking about how their relationship, the Japanese-U.S. relationship, is one of the cornerstones of freedom and prosperity and democracy. But it also goes to national security interests, security interests internationally.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit also today. It's been resonating. Washington Post, Kellyanne, as you probably know, claims that Secretary Flynn had talked to the Russian people about sanctions prior to Donald Trump being sworn in as the next president, as 45th president of the United States, which would violate some laws, some rules. Governor Mike Pence responded this way.
I talked to General Flynn about that conversation. They did not discuss anything having to do with the United States' decision to expel diplomats or impose a censure against Russia.
So we're at a standstill here. Flynn says he doesn't recall making those comments with the Russians regarding sanctions. Washington Post claims they have 9 sources. Your thoughts? Where is the administration on that?
My thought is it's not for me to comment any further on that at this time. Eric, I will repeat that Vice President Pence's office or a spokesman has said that the Vice President in that TV interview was basing his comments on a conversation that he had with General Flynn. All of that is out in the public domain, so I'll just repeat that and leave that there.
Yeah. So you think Washington Post got it wrong?
I think that these are very highly sensitive matters, and I would prefer not to comment any further.
Okay. One of the other topics bubbling up all week, as you know, the off-the-hand comment, the remark you made about Ivanka Trump's clothing line. You said you would support it. It created quite a stir. Can we take a listen to a little sound from Jason Chaffetz's town hall? Listen.
We sent a very candid, very direct letter to the White House and to the Office of Government Ethics. They need to investigate it. What Kellyanne Conway was wrong. It should never happen again.
All right, Kellyanne, tell me, the president, I think he gave you some words of support.
He did indeed. That part I will reveal. He said he backs me 100% and that he knows that and that we'll leave it at that. In other words, as I've said before, I'm very blessed to work for a man who's been pro-woman his entire career. He has hired and promoted women in the Trump Corporation, the Trump campaign, the Trump cabinet, the Trump West Wing. It's just natural to him to do that, and I appreciate the fact that he understands I meant no malice and that he backs me 100%. He understands the fire that we all take here as well. I just hope sometime soon, Eric, that the president, forget me, the president of the United States who was elected will get the credit he deserves for, in just the first short 3 weeks, boosting wages, helping to create jobs, protect jobs, keep them here, taking meaningful steps towards tax reform. We're going to have tax relief and tax reform in this country that we've never seen before, even blow the wheels off the 1986, repealing and replacing Obamacare. He's doing amazing things for this country, and I don't want to be just a distraction. I just want him to get the credit, but I'm really happy he supports me.
Do you think Jason Chaffetz is going a little too far with this? Is this water under the bridge already?
I'm not going to comment on Congressman Chairman Chaffetz's particular comment about me. I just know it was a really rough town hall because I watched it on TV, and I know it's a district he won with 75% of the vote, but there seemed to be a lot of folks there trying to make their point. Opposition parties certainly. The Democrats, I think the political left more generally is very animated and a little bit hysterical these days. Look what they've done to our Supreme Court nominee. Look what they've done to our cabinet nominees. They're 0 for 7 now. What were all those sleepless nights for? Obstructing and trying to embarrass and humiliate. And we have Betsy DeVos and Tom Price and Jeff Sessions and the rest of them in our cabinet now, and we'll continue to. I think all of our nominees will be confirmed. This president has put together the most conservative and most qualified, brilliant cabinet in modern memory. And he deserves to have them all confirmed. We need secretaries of commerce and treasury and agriculture. So,
Kellyanne, I appreciate your time. I need to go. I'm up against the break. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, up next, what can the Trump administration do next after the Ninth Circuit's refusal to reinstate the travel ban? That debate moments away. In the Impact segment tonight, the fallout from the Ninth Circuit's ruling against President Trump's travel ban. Following last night's decision, Washington State's Attorney General, who has led the push against the ban, sounded off about what he thinks the president should do next.
The president does have a choice. He can continue to fight this, or he can tear up this executive order and start over. I would strongly encourage him to consider the latter course of action.
But is that the right way to go? Joining us now to analyze from Santa Ana, California, Chapman University law professor John Eastman, and from Washington, Jesse Burns, associate editor at The Hill. Start with you, Professor Eastman. The right way to go, we've heard all day what the Trump administration plans to do. Looks like they're going to go back. They may go back to the Ninth Circuit, and they also may write another EO, executive order. What should he do?
Well, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think he should do both. truth. I mean, the fact of the matter is this Attorney General is going to challenge whatever he does with his executive order, because the one that he previously issued was patently constitutional, square on and authorized by the existing law, a law, I might add, that neither the Ninth Circuit nor Judge Robart bothered to cite in their opinion, saying the president was unlikely to succeed on the merits. And so I think the president should continue to go back to the trial court and lay the case out, but he ought to issue new executive orders segmenting each of the components of this one, saying, okay, you say there's a due process right for people coming over from Somalia who have never been here. The Supreme Court has said otherwise numerous times. Here's that executive order.
Yeah, so let me get Jesse Burns in here. Jesse Burns, there have been constitutional law professors all day talking about if you take the executive order on its merits, not on standing, but on its merits, likely the Trump administration will win at the Supreme Court level.
Well, what the Ninth Circuit found, one of the two things that it ruled essentially was that it rejected the government's argument that they had to reinstate this travel ban immediately for national security reasons. Of course, if it goes to the Supreme Court, and it seems to be some confusion over whether the Trump administration will actually go that route. They said tonight that all options are on the table. But if it does go to the Supreme Court, right now there are only 8 justices. So if it deadlocked 4-4, this Ninth Circuit ruling, which essentially blocks this travel ban, would be the one that would remain in effect.
Professor, do you agree with that? Do you think that it would end up being a 4-4 tie at the Supreme Court level at this point?
I would hope not. I would hope it would be at least 6-2, and quite frankly, I hope it would be unanimous. The law is so patently clear here. The Supreme Court itself has said questions of who to admit into the United States or not is solely within the powers of the political branches, largely immune from judicial review. And the statute that gives the president authority here could not be more clear that the president has this authority. So I would hope that the Supreme Court would decide this unanimously and push back. Well, quite frankly, and I said in your other guest magazine earlier today, or newspaper, I think this is a coup d'etat by the judiciary, unwilling and refusing to recognize the results of the election last November.
Yeah, and Jesse, is it possible that this court, I mean, we know the Ninth Circuit's a liberal court. We know that. There are other circuits. You go to Texas, you'll have probably a more conservative opinion coming out of Texas, but the Ninth Circuit decided to take it up and decided to push back on Trump's travel ban.
Well, there are a variety of options here. One thing that kind of broke late tonight was that we understand a judge on the Ninth Circuit is requesting the full panel to review it. Of course, the ruling yesterday was just from a 3-judge panel. It was unanimous, which does complicate the president's argument.
But unanimous in a very liberal circuit.
Right. So, if the Trump administration continues to pursue this at the Ninth Circuit level, which could happen in the next couple of weeks, we don't know yet, then that, court is going to be the one at play. But the bigger, alluding to what John said earlier, if it plays out in the federal district court up in Seattle, the merits of the case is what the administration feels like they've got a stronger case on, and Trump is going to, continue to play it out there. At the same time, he might bring forward a separate executive order because he wants something to get done.
Mm-hmm. Professor, throughout the day there were rumblings that possibly the court was upset. Did we lose the professor? Do we have the professor? Is he here? I think we lost the professor. All right, I'll ask you that, Jesse. Okay, professor's back. There was rumblings all day today that maybe the court was upset because at one point Mr. Trump, President Trump, had said that the court, this isn't even a case for the court. It shouldn't even be heard by the court, and they pushed back on that.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a provision in the law on the revocation of visas that say the Secretary of State has that authority, and Congress has specifically deprived the lower courts of having any jurisdiction to consider such matters because they recognize this is in the core wheelhouse of the executive power. What was the Department of Justice supposed to do in open court at the hearing earlier this week? Announce all of the intelligence we have about which people we're following and who might be terrorists coming into this country so that we advise them? I mean, there's a reason the executive operates in certain areas outside of judicial review, and this is one of them. And the combination of the executive and the Congress here, like I say, it's palpably clear the president was well within
being those challenged of going to the Supreme Court and seeing a different ruling. But I think something to remember with all of this is that this order, this restraining order that was imposed last week in Seattle, that's going to stay in place until there is some type of other ruling. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, the Trump administration, what they could do and what we're expecting at this point at least is for them to craft a maybe narrower executive order that exempts some of these refugees and while pursuing this legal case.
All right. I got to leave it right there, John and Jesse. Thank you very much. Coming up, the Trump administration administration ramping up efforts to take on America's enemies abroad. Who should be target number one? Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters joins us to weigh in next. In the personal story segment tonight, dealing with America's enemies. Earlier today, President Trump addressed the dangers facing the country during his news conference with Japan's Prime Minister.
While I've been president, which is just for a very short period of time, I've learned tremendous things that you could only learn, frankly, if you were in a certain position, namely president. And there are tremendous threats to our country. We will not allow that to happen. I can tell you that right now.
Joining us now to analyze from Washington, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, a Fox News strategic analyst. Colonel Peters, you say Russia is without a doubt the greatest and gravest threat to the United States. Make that case, sir.
Well, it's not only because Russia has Vladimir Putin at its head and has an arsenal of nuclear weapons that can destroy us. Vladimir Putin is the first European head of state since Adolf Hitler to invade his neighbors. Vladimir Putin is doing his best to break up NATO, the most successful peacetime alliance in history, and a bargain for the U.S. He's trying to break up the EU. He's conniving and bribing and waging a propaganda war to support neo-fascist candidates like Marine Le Pen in European elections. He's determined to drive us out of the upper Middle East, Syria, Iraq, the upper Gulf, and he's very successful. He's allied with our archenemy, Iran. He's,
can I stop you right there?
Give me two more. No, give me two more here.
Go for
he
it.
Also, his military is mass slaughtering civilians in Syria, driving their relatives into the arms of the jihadis. Right. And oh, by the way, he murders his political opponents, journalists, activists. But he does have one redeeming quality. He loves dogs.
Okay, all right.
So did
okay. So I don't have a ton of time, but I want to push back on you because I hate to be called an isolationist, but all those things you mentioned are horrible and bad, but they frankly don't threaten the United States per se. I will, however, make the case that Iran does. You mentioned Iran. Iran are the ones who, the mullahs and the people chant death to America. They're weaponizing. They're testing ballistic missiles. They're ready to be nuclear. I would say, and they finance terror that ends up coming to our shores at times. I would say Iran is a greater threat than Russia.
Well, Iran is small beer. We can handle Iran if it comes down to it. And by the way, you know, breaking up NATO does directly affect America. Charles Lindbergh, on the eve of World War II, was convinced that what happened in Europe didn't matter. Well, guess what? I mean, I'm sorry. Putin directly affects the security of the United States. He means us ill. He's not our enemy because we want him to be. He has chosen to be our enemy.
Is he still, sir? Is he still, though? I mean, yes, we've had problems with Russia in the past, but I don't know. Is it crazy to say that maybe he doesn't want to take us out and maybe we don't have to take Russia out? Maybe there can be one superpower, one, I don't know, small beer power or two?
So you would think it's okay if he just invades his neighbors, slaughters people? No,
I don't think it's okay, but I don't consider that a great threat to the U.S.
Is it okay that he interfered in the United States election? I mean, this guy.
First of all, Colonel, I love you, but you know we can wait to see the proof of that. We're still waiting for that evidence. Before I let you go, can we talk a little bit about this back and forth between Senator John McCain and President Trump? John McCain leveling the first, I don't know, I guess let's call it a grenade at the presidency, saying that the Yemen raid was a failure.
Well, I think McCain has a temper, and he was reacting to the claims of raging success by the White House. Now, look, this raid in Yemen was neither a total success nor a total failure. It was combat. Things go wrong sometimes. The raid achieved some of its goals. It didn't achieve all of its goals. A U.S. SEAL was killed. People get killed in combat. Right. I mean, it's not like Hollywood where everything's smooth and slick as a greased snake.
But McCain lobbed the first grenade. He fired the first shot when he said it was a failure, and then the White House came back and said, "How dare you do that? That diminishes the loss of the SEAL."
The White House had been claiming great success, and you know, when the White House plays politics with the death of a U.S. service member, whether it's a SEAL or it's Snuffy the garbage collector, that is just wrong. Now, John McCain has a temper, but I'll tell you, he's a great patriot who's literally bled for this country. And if I have to pick, you're going to make me pick, Eric, I'll pick John McCain every time.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Colonel Peters, thank you very much. Directly ahead, a new outrage at UC Berkeley. Its student newspaper, publishes essays defending last week's riot against Breitbart editor Milo Yiannopoulos. Stay tuned. In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, the far left's war against free speech. Last week, the University of California, Berkeley descended into violent chaos ahead of a speech by Breitbart editor Milo Yiannopoulos. The riot caused more than $100,000 in damage and forced the speech's cancellation. Despite that, UC Berkeley is actually praising the violence and opposing Yiannopoulos' right to speak. Joining us now to analyze from Washington, from the National Center for Public Policy Research, Horace Cooper, along with Jamila Bey, a radio talk show host. Now, Jamila, I'll start with you. We all know about the right of free speech, but in the Constitution, it's talked about as a peaceable protest. In other words, peaceful protests are protected, not violent protests.
Absolutely. And frankly, these young students at Berkeley, who are among the smartest in the world, put themselves on the line in defense of their fellow students. One of the highest things that we hope our people do in battle, and they're doing it already at school, to say we do not accept the violence that Milo, I'm sorry, I mispronounced his name, brings to the people he chooses to out, bringing out their names, people who...
Jamila, we agree. We agree on the right to protest the speech, but we disagree on the part where the violence was actually, held on a pedestal by UC Berkeley. 5 op-eds published praising the violent part of it.
Well, these students are young people, and I'm sure that they may even change their minds, but the arguments they made were sound. And what they said was...
I'm going to bring Horace in. I don't mean to keep cutting you off, but how can you say it's a sound argument when the Constitution clearly protects free speech, but not violent free speech? Horace,
Okay.
I'm going to bring Horace in. Go ahead, Horace.
Here's the thing. These arguments weren't about being sound. These arguments were about justifying violence. If 5 people go to a Woolworths restaurant to peaceably demonstrate that they believe they should have the right to be there, the rhetoric that was demonstrated in these op-eds and the behavior that we saw at Berkeley means that it would have been okay for masked intruders to go to the Woolworths and beat the hell out of them because they don't agree with what they're standing for. The First Amendment's purpose is for us to have a civil disagreement, to bring the strong argument, not violence. This was a terrible example, and if they're this bright, then this is dangerous, a sign of where we're headed.
And Jamila, UC Berkeley claims to be the birthplace of free speech. Let's talk about the free speech on Milo's part. He wasn't allowed to speak.
He wasn't allowed to get up and read a list of illegals. He wasn't allowed to get up and give information that was going to be able to make it so that those who would do harm to such students could find them, could find their professors, could find their family and friends. That's what these students were protesting.
So let me just repeat your words. Let me just repeat your words. He wasn't allowed to read a list, or give information. He wasn't allowed to do that, yet the protesters were allowed to be riotous and violent, Horace.
Yeah, this is an argument that somehow something someone is going to say gives me a heckler's veto, not just to interject myself, but to burn the place down, to threaten and assault and attack people. What if this had been a gay pride event on the campus and some individuals decided to put masks on and they were going to shut this down because they didn't agree and they were going to do it with violence?
Well, that certainly would have happened at Berkeley.
This is unacceptable.
What is unacceptable is that Milo has made millions of dollars on going and bringing violence and bringing terror to individuals he doesn't like. We know that he went on a college campus and outed.
If that were true,
that is absolutely true. Milo
if that were true, he would be indicted. He has not injured one person. He has not engaged in a violent act against one person.
You're wrong. You are absolutely wrong. Milo got kicked off of Twitter because he called his
guys, hold on. But clarify, Jamila, what violence did Milo himself perpetrate?
Milo himself did not throw a brick or hurl a slur. Milo said, "Hey, everyone, if you want to get it,
Jamila, that's speech. That may be disgusting speech to some people, but it is still protected speech."
That's bringing threat. That's not protected on a college campus. Berkeley has the right.
Protected in America.
Berkeley students have the right to say no. We are standing up for the least among us.
Guys, one at a
we are
time. I'm sorry.
standing up for those who do not have the voice.
We will throw a brick at you.
All right, I'm going to leave it right here. Jamil, I'll give you 20 seconds. Go, finish this up.
These students did what they learned in class. They stood up together. They spoke out together.
Well, that's a shame.
Police showed up, and you know, it's better than if
they learned to create $100,000 in damage with broken windows, throwing fireworks at police, and smoke bombs. This is what they're learning at UC Berkeley. I thank God my son goes to Colorado. I got to leave it right here.
Every student has the right to speak up, and I commend Berkeley students.
And we agree with speech. We just don't agree with the violence. Horace, Jamil, thank you. Up next, Bill O'Reilly's interview with President Trump made headlines across the world and played a big role in this week's news developments. We'll take a look at it right after this.
O'Reilly Factor, the #1 cable news show for 16 years and counting.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly, and in the Factor follow-up segment tonight, another look at Bill's Super Bowl interview with President Trump. Dealing with Iran was a key focus in the discussion, with today giving a stark reminder of the contentious relationship. Hundreds of thousands of Iranians rallied for the country's anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, chanting "Death to America," along with burning the American flag and effigies of President Trump. In his wide-ranging interview with Bill, President Trump addressed the new strategy to deal with Iran, along with other critical issues facing the country. Here it is.
Let's talk about Iran. Your assessment. Do you
come back? President Trump's new immigration orders taking center stage in Arizona after an illegal immigrant's deportation sparks a major protests. Don't go away.
See you
in the Back of the Book segment tonight, cracking down on illegal immigration. Immigration officials in Phoenix are under fire after following through with the 2013 deportation order against an illegal immigrant convicted of felony criminal impersonation. The woman's deportation leading to fierce protests among immigration activists. They claim immigration officials are now targeting individuals who pose no violent threat. Today, Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly defended the deportation.
Are the right people being deported?
They were picked up. They were subject to removal. There are court orders against about removing these people. And again, some of them have fought removal for years and years and years. So when their luck ran out, so to speak, and an immigration judge said, this person, male or female, whatever, needs to be removed, and they go remove them, the argument that they've been here for so many years, I think, is not a strong argument.
Joining us now with reaction from Washington Examiner columnist Kristen Soltis Anderson, and with us in studio, attorney and author Danielle McLaughlin. All right, Kristen, let's start with you. Your thoughts on this removal? Look, they broke the law. They need to go, right?
And Donald Trump always said that if he became president, this was what he was going to do. He was going to prioritize deportation of criminals first. And this is what his executive order said. The thing he has going for him is that with this action and with the action he's taken against sanctuary cities, it's among the most popular things we're seeing in public opinion polls of all the things President Trump has sort of said he wanted to do. I think the question is going to come down to the implementation. As they're going around and beginning to deport more and more people, are they actually getting the violent folks, or have they cast perhaps too wide a net and are catching people with more sympathetic stories and perhaps more of a reason to stay?
Okay, Danielle, your thoughts on this deportation?
You know, I agree that ultimately she was a felon. She was a convicted felon. It's a very sympathetic story, of course. She was brought here as a 14-year-old. So I'm not sure that she makes the best case if you're concerned about making pragmatic solutions to immigration. If you're really with Trump and you want to really want to take a hard line, she's a great case because it really shows that he's willing to deport pretty much anybody.
All right, let me read this Politico headline. It says, this past weekend, ICE engaged in concerted nationwide enforcement operations to take into custody and return adults who entered this country illegally and with children. Now, Kristen, here's the catch. That Political headline is from January 2016 under the Obama administration. Jay Johnson.
You're absolutely right. And Obama got a little bit of flack from the left. Some folks called him deporter-in-chief, but certainly you did not see the level of outrage that you're likely to see here when it comes to President Trump, that now folks on the left for whom they may not have been so eager to criticize President Obama, now that President Trump is sort of taking this policy and dialing it up to 11, actually putting some teeth behind it, you're going to see a lot more people turning out in the streets to protest it.
And Danielle, so we pointed out that this is not new under President Trump. President Obama actually started. In fact, this person was caught in 2013.
No, and absolutely. There were ICE raids back in Massachusetts early in Obama's administration, and he's deported about 3 million people. So he has done a lot of work at the border, particularly. I think the issue here is whether people want to see people here illegally have a path to citizenship or not. And about 60% of the American people actually want to see that. Whether that's citizenship or legal status, which implicates the voting rights of these people, is another question altogether. But there is, I think, public support for it, and I think that's where the rubber's going to hit the road for Trump.
Yeah, and Kristen, there was word that President Trump may have been open to the Gang of Eight and some of that push to allow citizenship for people who are here illegally, and then they walked it back a bit. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that makes sense to me that they would walk it back a little bit, just because the Gang of Eight bill had been so politically toxic on the right. It was one of the things that people would criticize someone like Senator Marco Rubio for having supported. He walked back his support for it eventually. But right now, if you're the president of the United States, your job is to execute the laws that you've got in front of you. And right now, unfortunately, because there is no comprehensive immigration reform, you've got a lot of folks that you can make a really compelling case that they deserve to be able to stay, but there's no legal path for them to be able to do so. So if you're president, your hands are kind of tied. Your job is to execute the laws as they are on the books. It's up to Congress to decide what they want to do legislatively about fixing that issue.
And one of the other things is that candidate Trump promised as President Trump he was going to do exactly this, Danielle.
No, he did, and his electorate wants to see those promises being implemented. But what we're still seeing, I would give another example, is the wall. 60% of Americans are against that now that they think that they're going to have to pay for it with tax dollars. So campaigning is one thing, governing is another. Let's see what happens.
I can't take the wall back now. I mean, he promised the wall.
He did promise the wall, but if it becomes politically toxic, he's going to have to make a decision.
All right. Kristen, Danielle, we're going to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Straight ahead, a special weekend interview you won't want to miss. We'll be back in just a minute. Before we go, some important things we want to bring to your attention. First, be sure to catch tomorrow night's episode of Water's World. Bill O'Reilly enters Jesse's domain for a lively interview you won't want to miss. Water's World airs at 8 p.m. Eastern. I've literally canceled all my plans tomorrow to watch it. I'm not going skiing. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to watch. I'm going to tape it, DVR it, and maybe watch it again right after. And be sure to check out the newest episode of the Contributing Factor podcast. These podcasts are great. You got to see this. Bill O'Reilly himself reveals which of his 9 presidential interviews was the best of his career. You can find the Contributing Factor. That podcast is on iTunes and Bill O'Reilly. Also, don't forget to pre-order your copy of Bill's upcoming new book, Old School. It comes out March 28th. And of course, if you sign up for a BillO'Reilly.com premium membership, you'll get any one of Bill's books free of charge. Finally, ready for this? I'm very proud to announce my own new upcoming book. It's about corruption and cronyism in Washington. It's called The Swamp. Guess why it's called The Swamp? You got to drain the swamp, right? Well, it's bookstores on June. Hi, I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get straight to our top story, the Trump administration's battle over national security. During a news conference with Japan's Prime Minister today, President Trump reacted to the Ninth Circuit Court's ruling against his temporary travel ban and its potential impact on America's security. Listen.
We are going to keep our country safe. We'll be doing something very rapidly having to do with additional security for our country. You'll be seeing that sometime next week.
Joining us now with reaction from the White House, Kellyanne Conway, senior advisor to President Trump. So, Kellyanne, what's this all about? I think the president called them new steps, and we'll be seeing them very rapidly.
Well, we have many different options in moving forward. As you know, Eric, yesterday's decision did not affect the merits at all. We're very confident, fully confident that we'll prevail on the merits. There's nothing that the Ninth Circuit did yesterday that calls into question the president's ability under the statute and under his constitutional authority to keep the homeland safe, which is precisely his point. So there are a number of different steps. We can obviously go back to the district court. Some people said it can get all the way to the Supreme Court. He certainly always has the opportunity to put out new executive orders, but the president will make that decision in due course. I just want to make clear that the branches are equal under our Constitution, and in this case, the court seemed to supplant the president's judgment about national security with its own, and that's not an appropriate use of its power.
You know what? One of the other options available to the president is to continue the travel ban. He could literally instruct his TSA, the Board of Security, to say, "Hey, we're going to continue the travel ban. Let the Supreme Court tell us not to do that."
Well, and what the president said today in that really remarkable joint press conference with Prime Minister Abe, they had a terrific day together here at the White House, meeting privately first, having lunch thereafter, and then having that joint press conference for all to witness. What he said there is that extreme vetting was his idea, that candidate Trump came up with that idea when he was running, based on the information that he had received, based on the exigencies that attend to these matters. And since then, as president and as commander-in-chief, he of course receives his daily presidential briefing. He has access to information that you and I don't, and he is that much more convinced that in the interest of keeping this nation safe, that he will take the steps necessary. And we know constitutionally and statutorily he is within his rights to do that.
Does the administration think the courts are playing politics?
Well, more broadly speaking, we believe that judges should not play politics at all, and we respect the fact that the three branches are separate and independent and also equal. One is not supreme over the other. If there are politics in any particular judicial decision, then the president and his spokespeople have a right to call that out. What really concerns us here is that a fair reading of the statute and the Constitution, none of which were affected at all by a very narrowly prescribed TRO ruling. The president is well within his authority, and I would add he has a duty and a responsibility to do this. And also, Eric, it's something that he put front and center in his campaign. Donald Trump beat a former Secretary of State, a former United States Senator who was the United States Senator in New York on 9/11, and a former First Lady. He beat that individual based on his much more muscular, much more clear and robust and tough position on these matters.
I don't want to cut you off, but you mentioned 9/11. Is there any initiative? Are we going to look forward to maybe the next couple of days, next couple of weeks on some sort of Gitmo strategy going forward?
Well, the president has said he will address any number of the issues that he talked about during the campaign. But remember, first and foremost, this man that I work with every day, he is focused on the nation's security. And, in that regard, he has stated in the past his position on Guantanamo Bay. He has stated his position on terrorism. He's stated his position on ISIS. They're not to be contained or ignored. They are to be eradicated off the face of the earth. And even in his joint press conference and his meetings today with Prime Minister Abe, of course, they're talking about how their relationship, the Japanese-U.S. relationship, is one of the cornerstones of freedom and prosperity and democracy. But it also goes to national security interests, security interests internationally.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit. Also today, it's been resonating. Washington Post, Kellyanne, as you probably know, claims that Secretary Flynn had talked to the Russian people about sanctions prior to Donald Trump being sworn in as the next president, as 45th president of the United States, which would violate some laws, some rules. Governor Mike Pence responded this way.
I talked to General Flynn about that conversation. They did not discuss anything having to do with the United States' decision to expel diplomats or impose a censure against Russia.
So we're at a standstill here. Flynn says he doesn't recall making those comments with the Russians regarding sanctions. Washington Post claims they have 9 sources. Your thoughts? Where is the administration on that?
My thought is it's not for me to comment any further on that at this time. Eric, I will repeat that Vice President Pence's office or a spokesman has said that the Vice President in that TV interview was basing his comments on a conversation that he had with General Flynn. All of that is out in the public domain, so I'll just repeat that and leave that there.
Yeah, so you think Washington Post got it wrong?
I think that these are very highly sensitive matters, and I would prefer not to comment any further.
Okay. One of the other topics bubbling up all week, as you know, the off-the-hand comment, the remark you made about Ivanka Trump's clothing line. You said you would support it. It created quite a stir. Can we take a listen to a little sound from Jason Chaffetz's town hall? Listen.
We sent a very candid, very direct letter to the White House and to the Office of Government Ethics. They need to investigate it. What Kellyanne Conway was wrong. It should never happen again.
All right, Kellyanne, tell me, the president, I think he gave you some words of support.
He did indeed. That part I will reveal. He said he backs me 100% and that he knows that and that we'll leave it at that. In other words, as I've said before, I'm very blessed to work for a man who's been pro-woman his entire career. He has hired and promoted women in the Trump Corporation, the Trump campaign, the Trump cabinet, the Trump West Wing. It's just natural to him to do that, and I appreciate the fact that he understands I meant no malice and that he backs me 100%. He understands the fire that we all take here as well. I just hope sometime soon, Eric, that the president, forget me, the president of the United States who was elected will get the credit he deserves for, in just the first short 3 weeks, boosting wages, helping to create jobs, protect jobs, keep them here, taking meaningful steps towards tax reform. We're going to have tax relief and tax reform in this country that we've never seen before, even blow the wheels off the 1986, repealing, replacing Obamacare. He's doing amazing things for this country, and I don't want to be just a distraction. I just want him to get the credit, but I'm really happy he supports me.
Do you think Jason Chaffetz is going a little too far with this? Is this water under the bridge already?
I'm not going to comment on Congressman Chairman Chaffetz's particular comment about me. I just know it was a really rough town hall because I watched it on TV, and I know it's a district he won with 75% of the vote, but there seemed to be a lot of folks there trying to make their point. Opposition parties certainly. The Democrats, I think the political left more generally is very animated and a little bit hysterical these days. Look what they've done to our Supreme Court nominee. Look what they've done to our cabinet nominees. They're 0 for 7 now. What were all those sleepless nights for? Obstructing and trying to embarrass and humiliate. And we have Betsy DeVos and Tom Price and Jeff Sessions and the rest of them in our cabinet now, and we'll continue to. I think all of our nominees will be confirmed. This president has put together the most conservative and most qualified, brilliant cabinet in modern memory. And he deserves to have them all confirmed. We need secretaries of commerce and treasury and agriculture. So,
Kellyanne, I appreciate your time. I need to go. I'm up against the break. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, up next, what can the Trump administration do next after the Ninth Circuit's refusal to reinstate the travel ban? That debate, moments away. In the Impact segment tonight, the fallout from the Ninth Circuit's ruling against President Trump's travel ban. Following last night's decision, Washington State's Attorney General, who has led the push against the ban, sounded off about what he thinks the president should do next.
The president does have a choice. He can continue to fight this, or he can tear up this executive order and start over. I would strongly encourage him to consider the latter course of action.
But is that the right way to go? Joining us now to analyze from Santa Ana, California, Chapman University law professor John Eastman, and from Washington, Jesse Burns, associate editor at The Hill. Start with you, Professor Eastman. The right way to go, we've heard all day what the Trump administration plans to do. Looks like they're going to go back. They may go back to the Ninth Circuit, and they also may write another EO, executive order. What should he do?
Well, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think he should